see you again. Good luck with it.
We're going to have to do it all at once.
For the Associated Press.
Yeah.
The headline of today's meeting looks tough, looks strong. How will the detail stand up in the weeks and the months ahead?
I think the change of behavior that is required from whoever it is in Russia that's caused all this to happen, I'm not optimistic at all that that's going to change. They've had 3 swings at the bat, struck out 3 times. The duplicity, deceit, and deception that they exhibited is just beyond the pale. And I think it's an embarrassment to the athletes in the world that now at this stage they're fighting for the rights of their clean athletes, as they call them. Meanwhile, they've destroyed all the data that could either exonerate them or find that they're guilty. So that within itself is another layer of deception that's really happened.
In meeting rooms like today and like with the IOC Executive Board, are athletes listened to? Everyone says they've got an athlete commission. Athletes are at the heart of decision making. Is that your experience?
No, there was one athlete there representing the IOC, which from my point of view is just a rubber stamp vote. Becky Scott was on the phone. She explicitly made the point that during this whole debacle, no one's really mentioned the clean athletes, the ones that had their medals taken away, the ones that end up in 4th place and then 5 or 8 years later are upgraded to silver and gold. No one ever mentions them. So the heart and soul of the athletes is not really represented in this room. That's why I came. And I was actually disinvited from the beginning. Myself and Becky, we were not invited to come. And I had to write a letter to request to come, which is embarrassing within itself. So it just goes to show how WADA under this particular administration has not really stood up for the athletes the way that we deserve. And I feel like an athlete. I'm an old man now, but I still live and breathe the same way that I did when I was competing. And having been involved in anti-doping for longer than everyone in that room upstairs, period, with no exceptions. I've seen a lot. I've been through this 5 or 6 different times, and each and every time politics gets involved in anti-doping, things begin to go the wrong way, period.
Disinvited. So you have been disinvited.
I'm a member of the executive committee, but I was told that because I'm a standing member committee, that I didn't have the right to come. And then that was reversed. And it was I guess there was two different versions or 2 different ways you could look at it. One, the old rules of WADA versus the new rules that were adopted. So it was left to the president's discretion as to whether or not he wanted to have the voice of standing members to come to the meeting.
Do you link it with your position?
What do you mean with my position?
As I understand, you have written a letter to...
Well, I'm the chairman of the education committee and a member of the executive committee with voice but no vote, which I think is a travesty also. Becky Scott is a member of the executive committee and the chairman of the WADA Athletes Committee, and unbelievably, she has no vote at the executive committee level, which I think is a travesty. So those are some of the governance issues we started dealing with a year and a half ago. I've always really just run up the flag when it comes to the conflicts of interest within the organization, the duplicity of people serving multiple roles. And one of the things that I can say about USADA, which I'm not the chairman anymore, I'm chairman emeritus, is that when we get our executive board together, we represent only the issues that come in front of USADA because we have no conflicts. We get vetted out. We have to declare our conflicts. You can't work for an organization, represent a federation, coach any athletes, be a member of the Olympic Committee, anything. You have to be completely independent. That's why we're able to press the cases that we press, with absolute objectivity and no conflicts of interest, and that's why we're successful the way we are.
What do you think about
the politics? Why has WADA not come down harsher then? You talk about politics. Why is this decision not harsher? Why is it not a total blanket ban?
Because the politicians are making those decisions. There's not enough sports people involved that are independent and objective. The voice of the athletes, in my opinion, is not heard. There's two of us, and only one of us is here.
How do WADA signatories need to step up now to actually go through with any legal threats or intimidation, not to take World Championships away, refuse to go to Sport Accord 21?
That remains to be seen. I'm interested to see how that's going to fall out. I'm also interested to see what the process is going to be for clean Russian athletes, if there's such a thing, are going to be allowed to enter into the Olympic Games, because the last time it was a circus when the international federations had 3 or 4 months to go back and look at drug records, to go back and do analysis, to go back and look at all the blood profiles and everything else, and it's an impossible task. It wasn't going to happen then, and I'm not sure if the International Testing Agency has the time or the manpower to do it, because they're going to be having major responsibilities at the Games, and I don't think the international federations have the manpower to do it.
That Sport Accord conference in Ekaterinburg, 1 month before the IOC president's election, should stakeholders not go to that?
I have no opinion, nothing to say about that. That's out of my purview.
What would you say to a casual sports fan who looks at this situation, doesn't follow the play-by-play every moment, and wonders, are athletes at this kind of level really clean, and what is the message that this message sends today?
I think you have to listen to the athletes that are crying out for a clean sport, because it's happening in multiple Olympic committees, international federations, all types of organizations that represent athletes, and you have to listen to them, because once there was a time when no one was crying out for clean sport because it was so bad and they didn't have any faith in having a clean playing field. Now that WADA has done a substantial amount of work over the years, and a lot of the great national anti-doping agencies have done good work to give that kind of confidence back to the athletes. I know in the United States with USADA, the athletes believe that we're supplying and providing a clean playing field, and they're looking for us for direction and for us to fight the fight. And when I first started as a chairman, we didn't think that our job then was to protect the playing field, provide a level playing field, basically for athletes. And as we've come forward for the last 5 years, now we're in a fight to protect sport from itself. That's my personal opinion, and I know that I'm right. As I said, I've been in the anti-doping business officially since 1988, 1989. So that's like 30 years. And I've been on every level of it, from the IOC Medical Commission to the Athletes Commission to running the USOC, Committee on Substance Abuse Research and Education, USADA. I've been an athlete myself and been tested, so I've seen every aspect of it. And seen a lot of things that I won't be discussing here today. So I know from top to bottom that politics and anti-doping don't work. The athletes are crying out for a clean sport, and there's no question that they believe that what the Russians did in Sochi, what they did with this manipulating the data, and their very arrogant view of performance in sports and the use of drugs is just not acceptable anymore.
Do you have a message to Craig Reedy?
No, I don't. No.
What do you hold of the fact that WADA or Reedy has taken over this decision within the last 20 days of his presidency, rather than leaving it to the incoming president, who's got more future in this process?
I think most of the executive committee wanted it to get done under his term and make him responsible for whatever happened. That was important.
Mr. Moses,
Yeah.
what is the message to the clean Russian athlete, actually? What about them, that they had nothing to do with this and that they're trying to compete cleanly? What do you say to those athletes?
Well, I think for the clean Russian athletes, and there probably are some, it must be very tough to live in that kind of environment where you don't have a choice, where you live in a state where you don't have any rights, you don't have the rule of law to protect you, you don't have arbitrators, you can't get an attorney, and you can't fight the Olympic Committee and the federations, and it's a shame that they are in that condition. However, in 1980, I had to sit out on the Olympics because of pure political reasons, and I think the lesson to be learned for the United States was that don't do that again because your athletes will not go. So it was a tragedy and a shame, but this is different because this is in terms of the world of sports, this is absolutely contemptible criminal activity.
What does it say about?
sorry.
One question. What does it say about the Russian attitude altogether? Also, in future terms, that manipulations took place till the beginning of this year.
Say again.
What does it say about the attitude of the Russians altogether, the state? That manipulations, that altering of facts, still happened at the beginning of this year.
I blame the community of Russian, national governing bodies, federations, and sports industry responsible for it, and they're making it suffer irreparably. It's a crime of shame for their fellow citizens.
Therefore, under President Putin, there is a chance of change, that there is a chance of a different attitude in the future with the same president.
I think this behavior started well before Putin.
This was just that you think, you took that saying you should verify that textbook. Isn't it rather textbook?
That is